Good morning, and here's a breakdown of the current U.S. campaign. So, policy push on the persecution of Christians in Nigeria. What is going on? There's major developments that are key players and the controversies. Here are the key updates and development regarding the U.S. campaign against Christian persecution in Nigeria. Number one, there is a U.S. policy pressure and legislation. The legislation is sponsored by Senator Ted Cruz. Senator Ted Cruz has introduced the Nigeria Religious Freedom Accountability Act of 2025.
We're also going to talk about legislation I introduced this week to protect Christians in Nigeria. Nigeria has seen a persecution of Christians that has been staggering. Just this week, over 60 people were murdered by jihadists, by radical Islamists in northeastern Nigeria. They executed soldiers. They went house to house. This pattern of targeting Christians, targeting Catholic priests, targeting individual men, women, and children is horrific. And my legislation would put real consequences on the government of Nigeria and those who are facilitating this persecution, put real consequences on them to change that.
Which will ultimately impose accountability on Nigerian officials who are seen as facilitating extremist violence or enforcing blasphemy laws. Also, in his own part, the U.S. Representative Raleigh Moore introduced a House resolution condemning the persecution of Christians in Nigeria.
There is a persecution of Christians in Nigeria. The witnesses have made that clear. We heard the bishop speak. I don't know how many times we have to hear it or how many reports of martyred Christians, my brothers and sisters in Christ in Nigeria, how many times we have to hear that happen to take it seriously. And one of the things that concerns me is that it feels like at times it's echoing an indifference around this, and somehow we're going to develop our way out of it through developmental programs, and this indifference sounds like echoes of Rwanda to me, where we did nothing on that. And I think, as you remember quite clearly, President Clinton has stated that as one of his largest failures in his administration. President Trump has made a definitive decision to actively engage and stop the killing in Nigeria, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. You all have used a word that I think is very apt in this, and this is prioritization. And as Chairman Smith put it perfectly in his opening statement of this hearing when he spoke with the senior officials of the Nigerian government, is that we do want to work with them. We have the opportunity here. I think the Nigerians have an opportunity to deepen and strengthen their relationship with the United States if they will prioritize the protection of these communities. Of course, non-Christians are being killed too. We're not saying that's not happening, but there is a systematic targeted campaign that's happening here. I met with that same delegation, same as Chairman Smith did, and some of the feedback we were getting is a little bit of that same misdirection. But let's not turn a blind eye to what's happening. Let's not believe our lying eyes, right? One thing I'd want to point out here is we've had religious organizations and advocacy groups have been calling for humanitarian assistance in the Middle Belt region. And my understanding is that the Tinubu administration has not specifically requested it. That's why it's not there. They just have to ask for it, and our State Department will then provide that assistance to those organizations on the ground. That is a perfect example of prioritization and indifference to what is happening here. So that would be a great, to use your department's term, confidence building measure on the part of the Tinubu government in this, if they are serious about this. Because I can promise you President Trump is. He is very serious about this. A question that I have for you is, the Nigerian Constitution prohibits the ownership of firearms. But somehow, these Fulani militants operating in the middle belt of region of the country, they're all armed. And we're not talking about ISIS, we're not talking about Boko Haram. Why hasn't there been some type of move or campaign by the Nigerian government to disarm these militants that are operating there, where we're seeing a lot of this killing that is coming from them? They have access to AK-47s and other small arms to slaughter Christians. Is this something that you've been talking to the Nigerian government about? Because I think it would actually have a serious impact, and it is something that I raised with the Nigerian government officials when we met with them. Thank you.
Rep. Moore also spoke in a congressional hearing warning of systematic slaughter of Christians by armed militants. These armed militants include the jihadists and criminal groups. Rep. Moore urged more U.S. diplomatic, economic, and security engagement. He also probed for change in U.S. designation. The U.S. in this regard has redesignated Nigeria as a country of particular concern, known as CPC, under the religious freedom frameworks. That designation gives U.S. more leverage. The leverage can ultimately push for sanction, diplomatic pressure, or other measures against Nigeria. Also, there is also advocacy from Nigerian Christian leaders. By the research, there's a coalition of Nigerian Christian and civil society leaders which has made a public appeal to the United States of America. They are requesting that the violence against Christians is intensifying and amounts to a genocide. So therefore, they have called for international investigation. This international investigation, including through United Nations Security Council or the International Criminal Court, ICC. They are arguing that Nigeria is not doing enough to protect the vulnerable Christian communities in Nigeria. Now, what do we have as of now? There are reports of violence on the ground in Nigeria. The report estimates thousands of Christians were being killed, kidnapped, or displaced. There are also claims of a significant numbers of destroyed churches in Nigeria. One particularly severe incident is the Yawata massacre. The Yawata massacre happened in June 2025, where dozens to possibly hundreds of Christian villagers were reportedly killed and many were displaced. Now, what is the argument of Nigeria? Well, here are the counter arguments from Nigeria. The Nigeria government strongly rejects claims that Christians are being specifically targeted. The government characterized much of the violence as stemming from criminality, banditry, and insurgency, and they claim that it is not religious persecution. Well, in Nigerian defense, they argue the US is misrepresenting fact to pressure Nigeria into a CPC designation. Now, the question is, why the US is getting more involved now? Well, the campaign isn't just rhetorical. The lawmakers are proposing actual legislation, like sanctions via Cruz bill, as earlier stated. Number two, they want the designation of Nigeria as a CPC. The declaration of Nigeria as CPC will give the US more diplomatic tools. And of course, presently, there is a growing pressure from US Christian advocacy groups and some evangelical network. They see this as a moral issue of religious freedom. Well, when we go to geopolitical level, there's instability in Nigeria, and the instability in Nigeria has broader implications. US involvement could frame as part of security and human rights strategy. Now, the question we need to ask is that, what are the controversies or challenges that may spring up? Number one, there will be sovereignty challenges. Sovereignty challenges which involve Nigeria strongly objects to foreign pressure, especially when it comes to the issue of military threats. There will also be complexity of violence. Not all violence is purely religious. Many attacks are part of broader security issues. Broader security issues like terrorism, other farmer conflict, and banditry. Now, the other negative part of this situation is there will be risk of escalation. When we talk of military involvement, even planning by the United States of America, that raises serious diplomatic and moral risk. Now, what are the credibility behind all this situation? Some Nigerian Christian leaders are urging international intervention, while others argue that framing all violence as genocide could oversimplify local dynamics. Well, there is no verified congressional vote, such as 285 out of 383, and that explicitly authorizes a U.S. military invasion or gun blazing operation in Nigeria. Now, let's talk of what is actually happening. The truth of the matter is there's resolution in U.S. Congress, and the resolution is non-binding. The resolution is calling for CPC designation and supporting diplomatic or economic pressure. There is also policy planning by the executive branch, including possible military options, but not yet approved. Also, there are debates among lawmakers and civil society about what U.S. response should look like. The response has been speculated, maybe sanctions versus military, or military versus diplomacy. Here in Nigeria, Archbishop Onoyekan said, "Government knows those killing Nigeria." He said there should be no more rooms for excuses by the government. Archbishop Emeritus of Abuja, Catholic Archbishop John Cardinal Onayekon, delivered a forceful warning to Nigerian government over the country's deteriorating security situation, declaring that the authorities already know the perpetrators of the violence and must act urgently to protect citizens of Nigeria. Now let's listen up.
I've been saying it. We have been saying it, that we used to have a nation called Nigeria, and we Nigerians were proud to go abroad and boast that we have a country where we have Christians and Muslims 50-50 living in peace without implosion. We were very glad to be what we were doing, and we were making progress in national integration. What is happening right now should not be happening. There's no question about it that what is happening should not be happening. Children should not be picked from schools. We should not be traveling on the roads with our hearts in our minds. We should not be sleeping with one eye open. And we should not be in a country where we can't just travel when we want and go back when we want. And government cannot say that it is not their responsibility. They can say it if they like, but nobody agrees. That's why we have a government. They ask for our votes. We voted for them, at least so they said. They said we voted for them. Do the work. Do the work. Keep us safe. You have all the money of Nigeria at your disposal to do whatever you like with it. It's those monies, those resources are not available to the ordinary Nigerian. Certainly not to the religious leaders, as far as I know. So I think the first thing we must agree is that there should be truth in this matter. The truth should be out that things are not correct. What is happening is not good, and let the government agree instead of all the time defending itself, denial. There is nothing wrong in Nigeria. There's nothing here that is not happening anywhere else. That's not helping us at all. It's not helping us at all. And they are not reflecting the moods and the feelings of the millions of Nigerians who are living in fear and anxieties. Not to talk of the millions who have suffered tremendously from insurgents and all kinds of violent criminals. Whether you begin to label them with religious titles, whether they are Muslims or Islamic or not, is another matter. But the fact remains that nobody can counteract that Nigerians are being killed. They are being killed, and we believe the government knows who are those killing Nigerians. And the government's duty is to stop them from killing Nigerians. And so far, we have not seen adequate action in this regard. My hope is that the noise that has been generated in the last 1 or 2 weeks from America, and the noise that the terrorists are also generating in Nigeria with the frequent actions that they are taking on our poor children. We hope that will wake up everybody who should be doing something to make sure that the country is safe.
In conclusion, unlike the wide speculations across the social media, there are no verified congressional votes, such as 285 out of 383, that explicitly authorizes a U.S. military invasion or guns blazing operation in Nigeria. The reality on the grounds are there is resolution in Congress, and this resolution is non-binding. It's calling for CPC designation and supporting diplomatic economic pressure on Nigeria. There's also a policy planning by the executive branch of US, including possible military intervention or options. But this is not yet approved. There's also debate among lawmakers and civil society about what U.S. response should look like. The response on what U.S. could do include sanctions versus military or diplomats. About what U.S. response should look like sanctions versus military diplomacy. And that ends today's edition of Global Affairs on Majo Television Network. I'm Wole Akinbasote, and before you leave, please do not forget to subscribe down below to our YouTube channel. Have a great day. Bye for now.